Happening now on Grid Tonight. Helmut Marko is leaving his longtime role with Red Bull. Does his departure signal a much needed change of culture within the team? Toyota Gazoo Racing is replacing MoneyGram at Haas F1. Is Toyota inching closer to becoming a full-blown factory F1 operation? The FIA have increased the number of super license points available in IndyCar. Is the world stage finally showing IndyCar the respect that it deserves? Hello to all of our viewers watching here in the United States and around the world. Welcome to Grid Tonight, your weekly motorsports news program. I'm Kobe Lambert, and with me tonight are Omi from JB Motorsports filling in for Joshua Bursis. We're happy to have you back, Omi, and Matt White from Grid Endurance Performance Index. We encourage everyone to interact with us in the chat, support us through Super Chat, and visit gridnetworktv.com for our latest content. Now, Omi, take it away with our top story this evening. We have a lot to talk about.
We do have a lot to talk about indeed. Hello, Kobe. Hello, Matt. And this should be quite a lot of fun. So let's delve into the top story, as you mentioned. Well, it's the end of an era as Red Bull Racing's longtime motorsport advisor Helmut Marko has decided to step away from his role. The 82-year-old Austrian has held his role for over 2 decades, and despite some of his many controversies over the years, Marko has been a huge part of Red Bull's success. He's helped Red Bull's leadership team make key decisions over the years, which included the late Red Bull founder Dietrich Mateschitz and long-time former team principal Christian Horner. Marko also led the Red Bull Junior Driver Program and brought many drivers into F1, although Red Bull has been heavily criticized for the musical chairs over the years. He was instrumental in helping bring Sebastian Vettel and Max Verstappen to Red Bull, producing 8 drivers' championship between the two. He also helped bring others into F1, such as Daniel Kvyat, Isaac Hadjar, Liam Lawson, Yuki Tsunoda, Alex Albon, Pierre Gasly, Carlos Sainz, Daniel Ricciardo, and of course, next year, Arvid Lindblad. In a statement, Marko admitted that narrowly missing out on this year's F1 driver's title with Verstappen influenced his decision to step away from the F1 world. He said missing out on the 2025 F1 championship deeply moved him to make the decision that it's time to move on to the next chapter of life. Marko wished the team continued success and believes they'll be fighting for both world championships again in 2026. Photo courtesy of Red Bull Content Pool. We've also got Lauren Mecky's statement here up on the screen. He mentioned it is very sad news that Helmut is leaving us. He has been such an integral part of our team and of Red Bull's entire motor racing program for more than 2 decades. This is therefore the end of a remarkably successful chapter. His departure will leave a void and we will truly miss him. I would like to express my sincere gratitude for his unwavering support, not only to the past months, but also during my early days at Scuderia Toro Rosso. On a personal note, Helmut, along with Olivier Mintzlaff, was the driving force behind me back into the Red Bull family, first in Faenza and then this summer in my current role in Milton Keynes. Helmut is a real racer at heart, always pushing us to the limit, always prepared to take risks in pursuit of our goals. Well, hello, Matt. How strange will it be to not see Helmut Marko at Red Bull moving forward? We'll start with you.
Good evening, Omi. Good evening, Kobe. First local mention for me. It's sunny Milton Keynes, I'll have you know. If anyone watched the show last week, you'll know my thoughts on Helmut Marko. I don't have, unfortunately, any balloons or party poppers with me this evening. That is a crying shame. Didn't quite expect this coming, to be honest. I thought he might go one more year, if I was totally honest. But you look at the trail of destruction that's gone through the Red Bull Formula One team this year, or over the last little while, with Christian Horner departing, Adrian Newey stepping away, Sergio Perez obviously gone, and all the other drivers that you listed there off Omi beforehand. Kind of left Marko as the long-standing linchpin of that team. Outside of Max and perhaps Jos on the Verstappen side, but yeah, I'm more intrigued to see where the junior program lies now without Helmut at the helm, because as you said, he was the key role in that throughout all of Red Bull's F1 days as the team, or teams if you include good to mention Toro Rosso again after all these years. And of course, the main team. And previous to that, when they were supporting drivers through F3000 and GP2 and other things of that nature. And of course, we had Red Bull sponsored cars, Red Bull supported drivers, certainly back in the end of sort of Champ Car and in the early days of IndyCar once it all came back together as well. So that's going to be interesting to see what happens with the program. Of course, we've had multiple Red Bull coloured cars in F2 over the last couple of years. How's that going to, manifest itself over the next couple of years? Are they going to slim it down? What are they going to do? That's all questions that need to be answered. But certainly has a big legacy behind him. Lots of unanswered questions going forward on the Red Bull side, Kobe.
Yeah, I'm going to display a comment here from Ben who said, "It is very sad, said hardly anyone at all." And yes, when this story came down the pipeline this week, I had to ask myself. I said, say something nice about Helmut Marko challenge, and I'll be honest, it's been really hard to come up with something nice to say about Helmut Marko. I know we're going to get into a lot of his baggage in the next question that we're going to discuss and all of that, but I guess the nicest thing I can possibly say about Helmut Marko was that he was a part of a lot of success at Red Bull. I know obviously, with him and Christian Horner been there, who we'll also talk about in a minute. We know it was really hard, work environment, with those two guys being there, but it still contributed to lots of success over the years. And Helmut Marko, he was really instrumental in bringing a lot of young drivers into the Red Bull program and getting them into Formula One. So although Helmut was really cutthroat towards a lot of those young drivers, a lot of them would have never gotten a chance to be in Formula One if it wasn't for him. Always scouting for the next big thing. But to answer the question you asked on me, it's certainly going to feel weird seeing a Red Bull Racing Formula One program without Helmut Marko being there next year. Like it's still weird to me that Laurent Mekies is leading the team right now as the team principal, because to me, it's always been Christian Horner's team principal. Still feel weird that he's not there. It was even weird. It was weird when Adrian Newey left there, and it's really odd that Helmut Marko, the one who I really associate Red Bull with this one person, is just going to be odd next year. And it really seems like that the Red Bull team, they're going to look a whole lot different in 2026 and beyond. And we'll see, given the success of the previous regime, if this success is going to continue into the future.
Yeah, lots has changed at Red Bull, and as you mentioned, we're going to discuss a bit more about that. So while Marko contributed to lots of Red Bull's success, he also contributed to lots of controversy as well. Marko has always had the reputation of speaking his mind, for better or worse. His bluntness didn't always sit well with everyone and often created headaches in the headlines for Red Bull. In recent years, his junior driver program became one of the most cutthroat environments in motorsport, as drivers got chewed up and spit out of the Red Bull family. That driver development program also reflected Marko's demeanor as someone who will say how he feels without sugarcoating a single word. When Sergio Perez was at Red Bull, he made a controversial comment that Perez's Mexican heritage played a factor in his struggles behind the wheel. He also accused of leaking inside information related to Horner's workplace misconduct scandal. Last year, he criticized Lando Norris's mental strength by saying the McLaren driver had some mental weakness because of the rituals he needs to perform well on race day. In this year's season opening Australian Grand Prix, when Isaac Hadjar crashed out on the formation lap and later cried before being consoled by Anthony Hamilton, Marko called Hadjar embarrassing instead of showing compassion and support for the young driver who didn't get to make a lap in his F1 debut. Then just a few weeks ago, Marko made controversial comments during the Qatar Grand Prix, accusing Mercedes driver Kimi Antonelli of intentionally pulling her aside and letting Norris overtake him to get key championship points. Red Bull put out a statement to apologize for the incident because Marko's words helped fuel anger and hate in Antonelli's direction on social media. We'll start with you on this one, Kirby. With Horner gone and Marko now on his way out of the door, does this signal a shift in Red Bull's culture?
Yeah, it really does feel like a new day at Red Bull. What a lot of these figures who have been here over the years, finally on the way out the door. I know we covered Christian Horner extensively on this channel whenever he was going through the investigation of his workplace misconduct and all of that. And now Helmut Marko is out, and I have a feeling this guy, although Red Bull never said it publicly, Helmut Marko over the years has been a PR nightmare for Red Bull all around. I mean, we always like to complain in motorsports about all these drivers being too vanilla this and too vanilla that. But Helmut Marko, if you like someone who has a lot of personality, he's your guy, because he's going to tell you exactly what he thinks, and whether you like it or not. And I mean, you listed a great list of controversies that's happened in recent years. I'm sure if we went even further back than that, we'd have a lot more Helmut Marko stories to talk about, because it just seemed like it's just endless controversies with him, and looking at some of the things that went down in the last couple of years. Thought the comment he made about Sergio Perez, that was obviously really disgusting. Something that he shouldn't have said at all to Checo. There were a lot of other reasons he could have pointed to, given Checo's struggles, as Max Verstappen's teammate in that Red Bull car, but he didn't have to bring his Mexican heritage into that, and that was just downright wrong for him to do that, in regards to leaking information and stuff like that. I don't know. Obviously, I don't know what happened there, but they said he was cleared once they, looked into all of that. And then we know Lando Norris has been outspoken about, his struggles with mental health and all of that. And then for him to come out, and basically attack Lando over that, another insensitive moment for him. And the thing that I remember earlier this year when Isaac Hadjar crashed out, before the Australian Grand Prix, the kid was devastated. He was looking forward to this moment his entire life, getting ready to make his F1 debut, and he crashes out before the race even starts. And then we saw how he was, so emotional. He was crying, and then Lewis Hamilton's dad, Anthony, had to come over there, give him a hug and let him know everything, was going to be okay. And in that moment, you think your so-called team leader, would show actual leadership, and put your arm around the kid and let him know that, hey, it happens to the best of us, that you can just go out there and get them next time. And instead of Helmut Marko being a true leader in that type of situation to console his young driver, Helmut Marko decides to say that the whole moment was embarrassing. So, and I feel like that's not, a way to show good leadership. I feel like he should have, embraced Isaac Hadjar more in that moment, instead of attacking him by saying that was, really embarrassing and all of that. And I guess that's just another example of how Helmut Marko shows zero compassion, for people, even in those type of moments. And it's interesting that we're talking about him tonight anyways, because we just talked about him, I believe it was the last week or the week before last, when he helped field those ugly online hateful comments towards Kimi Antonelli, when he accused Kimi Antonelli of helping Lando in the championship by letting him by there at the end of the Qatar Grand Prix. And I wonder if that was the last straw, for him and Red Bull, because it really seemed like, that he was just becoming more of a PR nightmare. And like, even if you had him with a PR person, he probably would not listen to them anyways. And we're truly in a different age now, in the business world and all of that. And I think Helmut, 82 years old, wants to go on and do things, in this final stage of his life. I understand, if he wants to step away and all of that, but in the end, I think that this is a good time for him to move on out, so Red Bull can move into a new chapter of his Formula One program.
Yeah, you're right, Kobe. From a different age, isn't it? I guess Marko and his comments over the last couple of years. It was last week when we talked off the back of the Qatar race, and which, as Obi mentioned, Red Bull put out a statement apologising. Well, they didn't apologise; they just put out a statement. It didn't say sorry at all. I mean, he was Dietrich's sort of right-hand man at the very beginning of all of the F1 stuff. A lot, obviously, along with Christian Horner, who was running the team back then, and to have gone this far, he's done well to stick around for this long. But I guess every dog has his day, or every whatever the phrase might be. It's finally all caught up to him, I guess. And one thing I was just thinking about as we got into the show there, big changes, of course, at Red Bull coming next year with Ford coming on board. Massive corporate Ford. They would not have stood for Helmut Marko comments that you've just listed off there, like the Lando stuff, obviously Hadjar, Kimi Antonelli last week, and of course Checo. In that kind of racist undertones kind of way that all panned out. So I don't think that would have gone down too well if he carried on in post into the next sort of time of Red Bull, the next chapter, let's say, of Red Bull. And hasn't it been so much quieter apart from the stuff from last week, on the Red Bull poking everyone's bears front since Christian Horner disappeared off into his pot of money that he got as compensation, and Lauren Mekies took the helm at Red Bull? Hasn't it been so much more of a sort of quieter place for them? And the final foghorn, as I called him last week, has now finally gone. So going to be interesting going forward in all of those factors, really. But yeah, Ford being part of it really doesn't surprise me. Adam says good luck to Helmut and in the rest of his career. Well, Adam, what do we say? He's 80 something. I'm not sure he's got too much of a career left. He can while away his days in Austria, and all of his opinions can go into Red Bull's Hangar 7, and they probably still wouldn't fill it. Cool to see Red Bull doing their 2026 delivery at the Ford headquarters in Detroit for a debut. Yes, much F1 26 excitement over the last couple of weeks, obviously off the back of the championship finale at the weekend, which I'm sure we'll talk about later on in the show.
Yeah, absolutely. And Adam giving me a shout out for the F2 and F3 coverage that concluded last week at the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix as well, with the season finale of Formula 2 on JB Motorsports. But yeah, Helmut Marko on his way out along with Horner should be a lot more peaceful. And I mean, there was a bit of talk even that has been going on that Helmut Marko actually signed Alex Dunn. And basically, Red Bull didn't approve of that really. And Alex Dunn now has no academy, so they kind of had to pay him then to kind of leave the academy. So there's been even more drama lately, and I guess that's just the way with Helmut Marko, but it should be a lot more peaceful down at Red Bull. Anyway, quickly progressing our way onto the second story of today. Well, Toyota Gazoo Racing will replace MoneyGram as the new title sponsor for the Haas F1 team, starting with the 2026 Formula One season. Moving forward, the team will be known as the TGR Haas F1 team. Toyota's relationship with Haas F1 began last year when they agreed to a multi-year technical partnership with a focus on the 3 Ps: people, product, and pipeline. The Japanese manufacturer wanted to allow their drivers, engineers, and mechanics to develop their skills in the F1 world. Several Japanese drivers got to test the Haas F1 car earlier this year on test days, such as Ryo Hirakawa, Ritomo Miyata, Shu Shuboi, Kamui Kobayashi as well. And then we had team principal Ayu Kamatsu said it's a privilege to deepen their relationship with Toyota Gazoo Racing through the new title sponsor agreement. And the entire partnership has been everything they hoped it would be, photo courtesy of Haas F1. With Toyota taking this additional step, does it seem like they're inching closer to becoming a full-blown factory Formula One team again, Kobe?
Well, this is really interesting because I remember on Grid Tonight last year it wasn't around this time, but it was in October. I believe it was around Las Vegas Grand Prix time or something like that. But what we were saying, when Toyota Gazoo Racing announced this technical partnership with Haas F1, we're wondering, is Toyota interested in coming back to Formula One, in the way they were in the past before? They obviously pulled out of the sport, and they, obviously had that technical partnership, and then, saw a lot of their Japanese drivers, get to run, which I'm sure really exciting for Toyota. And then they wanted to, try to get some people more on the personnel side, that they've been developing, over in Japan and whatsoever into Formula One. So I think that's all great, mutually beneficial partnership that Toyota, provide some of his expertise to Haas F1 and improve their program and, and get some of their people in the door. And I'm sure Toyota's, obviously learned a lot, from working with Haas on their end as well. But now this is the next big shoe to drop after coming in on a, I guess, small scale technical partnership. Now they're going to become the title sponsors, Toyota Gazoo Racing Haas F1 team. And it really does seem like that Toyota is getting even more serious about coming back into Formula One in the future. And I'm gonna make a prediction for the future. And we're gonna timestamp this right before 6:00 on the evening of December 10th. And I'm gonna say at some point in the future, I don't know when it's gonna happen, but within the next 5 years or so, Toyota Gazoo Racing is gonna completely buy out Haas F1, and they're gonna become the Toyota Gazoo Racing Formula One team. I believe that is going to happen as we've seen them, increase their partnership with Haas here. Really looking forward to seeing where this can go. And we talked about him last week, not just his, Japanese drivers. There's a Finnish driver by the name of Mr. Kalle Rovanperä. It seems like that this is the perfect storm, that they're getting everything set into place. That first Kalle has to, obviously earn his way to Formula One. He has to, it has to go well when he's racing down in New Zealand, just in the next month, actually. Yeah, that has to go well. Then he go into Super Formula in Japan. If that goes well, he'll be in the Formula 2 next year. And if he does well in Formula 2, maybe by the time Kalle does all of that, maybe we'll have Toyota Gazoo racing an F1 team. Or if not, they'll still obviously be involved with Haas here. But this seems like the perfect storm for Toyota to get that factory that factory back F1 program going, buying out Haas potentially, and having Kalle Rovanperä spot ready to go, assuming that he translate well over to the open wheel single seater world.
Yeah, couldn't agree more, Kobe. I mean, kind of from the outside, you could look at this and kind of go, oh, it's a bit like when Sauber had Alfa Romeo as their title sponsor when it was just a sponsorship tie-up. This is very different to that from what we've seen so far. And as you mentioned, Omi, all the Japanese Toyota drivers that have had a go in some of the old cars over the last little while, and the Kalle Rovanperä thing, his ducks are being lined quite nicely up in a row, aren't they, for this? Perhaps over the next couple of years. He would probably like them scattered across sideways with dirt covered, those ducks, but I jest. It's going to be really good to see how all of this stuff progresses. And I mean, Gene Haas now has got his get out clause, hasn't he? He's got Toyota right where he wants them to go when he finally decides that he's had enough of this and go, do you fancy just taking this on full time and taking it off my hands? Because you would imagine with all the backing and publicity and everything else that's behind or going to be behind Cadillac over the next couple of years, that the original American Formula One team is kind of going to get forgotten about a little bit, you would feel, unless they have a super successful start to next season, and who knows how that's going to all pan out. That it might be the right time for Gene to pull the plug on this, and it'll just end up being TGR F1. So that'll be all good on that side. It'll be interesting to see what they do in terms of driver development, and we've seen that throughout their programs elsewhere, especially down in Australia, which is an Australian Toyota funded thing. They've, of course, coming in the supercars with the Supra the next year, but they've had a great development curve with drivers down there. If they can put some people from from Super Formula and Super Formula Lights and stuff across into F3 and F2 over the next couple of years with the Haas tie-up, then we could be seeing a lot more different coloured cars than Red Bull cars in Formula 2, going back to our previous story, over the next couple of years. So very exciting times for Japanese Formula 1 fans, especially because they can have a full-blown team to cheer from again. Obviously with no Honda anymore, and Toyota pulling out soon after that in the old financial crash at the end of the noughties.
Yeah, don't like the sounds of the more of the same liveries in Formula 2. Makes it an absolute nightmare of identifying, I think. It is fair to say. Okay, well, swiftly moving on, Trickon Garage has signed Cadden Honeycutt to drive full-time in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series next year. Honeycutt will drive the number 11 Toyota Tundra, replacing 2025 Series champion Corey Heim, with sponsorship from Satellite. The 22-year-old driver from Texas also signed with Toyota, officially becoming a member of the Toyota Driver Development Program. In 2025, Honeycutt made it to the championship fold despite losing his ride with Nice Motorsport before the playoffs. They finished the year with Halfmar Franson Racing. Coming to Trickon, Honeycutt will have big shoes to fill as Heim's replacement. In Heim's historic championship-winning season, he won 12 races, 7 poles, adding 19 top 5s and 21 top 10s, while leading 1.625 laps with an average finish of 5th as well. While Honeycutt had 4 top 5 finishes and 14 top 10s, he wasn't able to win a race. Honeycutt said he's waited his entire career for an opportunity like this, and thanked the team for trusting him to carry on the legacy of this number 11 team, graphic courtesy of Trickon Garage. Is Cadden Honeycutt in a difficult position to succeed since his results in 2026 will be compared to Corey Haim's success, Matt?
Well, the plum ride in the Truck Series has been filled by the man that surprised us all by getting to the Championship 4 in the Truck Series last year. I don't think he's going to be, I mean, we went into the season last year expecting Haim to be the champion, and he absolutely destroyed everybody. Came close to losing it in the last race, of course, with the way that NASCAR crowns its champions, but did come through and take the title, and now moves on. So, I mean, this is the door was open here for someone to swoop in and take this. Caden Honeycutt has done it. Safe Flight continue the backing of that truck, and he's got to go in there and just do a reasonable job in terms of winning. I don't know, 4-6 races maybe. I mean, that would be, I guess that's kind of where they're probably aiming for him through the season. I know Adam and Ben in the comments will probably have a bit more of a clearer idea on Truck Series stuff than I do, but as an outward observer, that's probably where they would aim for him to be. Certainly would want him to be in championship contention all the way through the season, and got to prove that the performance that he put into in the second half really of last year to get to the Championship 4 with lesser funded teams was no fluke. And he's only 22, as you mentioned, Domi, so he's got plenty of time on his hands as well. So good luck to Caden, and hope that, back to my previous comment from before, another Toyota TRD driver, or TGR, also all part of the same family, really, it is an extended family, proves to be the man that can push or continue to push that program in the right direction after Haim's tremendous success this year.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely something exciting to keep an eye on for next season. Well, moving on once again, we actually had some exciting news this morning. The FIA announced changes to the number of points that drivers can earn towards a super license by competing in the NTT IndyCar series. Looking at the graphic on screen, courtesy of the FIA, the first and second place finishes in the IndyCar Championship each year will continue to receive 40 points and 30 respectively. Since you need 40 points to obtain an FIA super license, becoming an IndyCar champion will automatically earn you that. However, this is where the change comes in. We'll see more points awarded for third through to ninth place. The third place championship finisher in IndyCar will now receive 25 points, 20 for fourth, 15 for fifth. We'll have 10 given for sixth. Seventh will get 8. And then we will find ourselves with 6 points being given to 8th position. 9th will get 3 points, and 10th will get 1. And this has been an ongoing problem for the last few years, as Colton Herta has been trying to get into Formula One, but his lack of 40 super license points has made it difficult for him to achieve. When the Cadillac F1 team signed Herta to be its test and development driver, they found him a full-time seat in Formula 2 in 2026, so he could get the necessary points to potentially move him up to F1 in 2027. Today, Herta actually officially made his F2 test debut with high-tech TGR in the Abu Dhabi post-season test. So it's kind of ironic to see the FIA have made this announcement on this day. Nevertheless, this news should come as a welcome surprise to the IndyCar paddock, as many have believed that the American open-wheel racing series should get more respect on the world stage. This year's Formula One champion Lando Norris previously said IndyCar is one of the toughest series in the world, with a car that's incredibly tough to drive, praising the high-quality talent on the grid, and believed it should be viewed in the FIA Super License point structure above Formula 2. Let's also take a quick look at some maths that was completed by Hickey93 on X, which of course we all like to still call Twitter, of course. But as you can see on screen, he used the new FIA Super License point structure for IndyCar to see how many Super License points each driver would have had in the last 3 seasons. So Alex Palou would have 120, Dixon with 65, Award 65, McLaughlin with 61, Herta would fall one short with 39, Power with 31, Kirkwood with 28, Lundgaard and Newgarden both on 21, Ericsson on 10, Rosenquist also with that 10 number, Armstrong on 6, Rossi with 4, and Ferrucci with 3 as well. Of course, this removes prior super license clearances like previous F1 experience and Indy 500 wins, etc., etc. So, are you happy with the FIA's decision to award more super license points to IndyCar? And is the series finally getting the respect it deserves from Europe? I'll start off with you, Kobe, for this one.
About time, right? The IndyCar receives more respect from the FIA in this regards. I certainly see this as positive news, but I'm going back to the math that Higgy 93 did there, like 39 for Colton Herta. Like, oh man, if we had the system in place sooner, all he could have done this year is one FP1 session, get that checked off, and then he would have the 40 super license points. And then he'd probably be good. Well, he would be good to go, to race in Formula One. I do wonder if this system was in place years before now, would we have, seen Colton Herta go into Formula 2 in 2026? I'm thinking he probably would have, maybe, because, he'll get used to the Pirelli tiring, just Grand Prix racing on the European racing scene, since that valuable experience would be helpful, instead of jumping right into Formula One. But at the same time, a lot of people from the IndyCar paddock believe that their best drivers should not have to go to a feeder series, to prove that they can hang with the so-called best drivers in the world at the pinnacle of motorsport. And it's really nice to see this, see this championship, I guess put on a similar tier as the Formula 2 series. And IndyCar, as Lando said, it's one of the toughest, open wheel racing championships in the world, and then you have a lot of great talented drivers on the grid. A handful of those drivers have, past Formula One experience. And I do believe, behind Formula One, IndyCar needs to be up there, right with the super formulas and the Formula 2s of the world. I would personally rate, F1, then you got IndyCar, and then you have super formula, and then you have Formula 2 and everything, down below that. Yeah, so I certainly feel that this is a good decision, a good step forward in progress, and it's really nice to see, that all the, I guess, the stakeholders in Europe are finally seeing IndyCar for what it is, which is a great championship with a lot of great drivers who are deserving of an opportunity in Formula One. And it was really, I'm going to put this back on the screen. We all know how good Alex Palou is, 120. He's well out there and qualified to be in Formula One. And Alex Palou actually put out a fun statement today on social media saying that he has 2 super licenses for sale. He said they haven't been used, only serious inquiries. So trying to poke some fun at himself there, since he unfortunately lost out on his chance to go to Formula One probably forever after the McLaren thing, has gone down in the courtrooms and continues to go down. We know how good Scott Dixon is. I think Scott Dixon is obviously one of the best drivers who never got an opportunity to race in Formula One. Pato's been doing some good work with the McLaren Formula One team on the reserve side. It would be so much fun to see Scotty Mack in an F1 car, whether it's on a race or, just get the test, one of those things. I think he would do a really good job in F1. And Colton Herta, I'm sure at the end of the system, it really stings for him, that he would have come out 1 point short, because a lot of the hoops that he's had to jump through to try to get on the road to F1, it could have been prevented if we had this system, because it just would have taken one FP1 and he would have certainly been good to go. And got a comment here I'm going to read for Tony. You met from Ben. He said you appreciate the improvement, but it doesn't go far enough. As Lando said, it should at the very least be equal to F2. Third in those standings still gets an automatic full 40, while second in Indy does not. And then Ben also says that points are good just 3 years, so you can't have more than Palou has. Yeah, absolutely, Ben. What do you think, Matt?
Yeah, I've already put one bid in for one of Alex Palou's super licenses, waiting to hear back from him on that one. I mean, yes, good news. It's more of a spotlight on IndyCar, perhaps, if you for the nerds amongst us as we are looking at this stuff. And the Herta thing is just, for him to be on track in Abu Dhabi today, testing, ready for his F2 season, being a point shy is just silly, because of the way it's turned out. But that's what's happened. That's the FIA's had their end of season Motorsport Council meeting today, and that was one of the decisions amongst many others that have come out. So not just because that's happened today, it's just the way that the calendar fell. But outside of Pato Award, I don't really see there being anyone at the top end of the IndyCar championship, especially when you think of people like Scott Dixon, Will Power, they're in the twilight of their careers. Joseph Newgarden's not, completely a young man anymore, is he? There isn't anyone really outside of Pato O'Ward that you think about in IndyCar that you would go, yeah, I'd put him in an F1 car. Seriously, I'm talking like for a season. Lundgaard, he was okay in F2, but he's been better in IndyCar than perhaps his F2 days showed. Marcus Ericsson, again, towards the end of his career, he's had obviously a lot of prior Formula One experience. Felix Rosenqvist was on the cusp there, on the way up before he stepped across to Formula E, and then that kind of vaulted him back towards IndyCar. Thank you, Dario Franchitti. But I don't think there's anyone outside really of Pato at the moment in IndyCar. I have to say that really could stand a chance of doing a Jack Villeneuve or similar and jumping straight across to Formula One in the next couple of years. Will be proven different perhaps, with Cadillac obviously being involved, and see how that all pans out. But it is good to see IndyCar getting a little bit of a tickle up, let's say, in this points format to bring it closer to F2, which is always going to be the top step underneath Formula One if the FIA has its way.
Yeah, absolutely. The FIA will always make sure that is how things work out. Okay, well, that brings a close to the main stories from today. But in terms of news, Kobe's got more.
Yeah, got quite a bit of news. It always seems like before the holidays that everybody wants to get absolutely everything out before Christmas. Then we come back in January and we have, hardly anything to discuss. But let's talk about everything that's happened within this past week. Viking Motorsports will expand to a 2-car team next year in the NASCAR Raleigh Auto Parts Series. The team recently announced a new technical alliance with Richard Childress Racing and signed Parker Retzlaff to drive the number 99 Chevrolet with Danny Eflin serving as crew chief. Retzlaff's teammate will be Anthony Alfredo, who moves over to Viking from Young's Motorsports. Alfredo will drive the number 96 Chevrolet with Josh Graham as his crew chief. He said when the team reached out, he knew this was his shot because they're doing all the right things to build a competitive program. Photo courtesy of Viking Motorsports. North Wilkesboro Speedway announced that 50 additional laps have been added to next summer's NASCAR Cup Series points race at the Wilkes County Short Track. The first points race there since September 1996 will be called the Window World 450. It will also be NASCAR's first 450-lap race since 1974. The track's executive director, Greg Hoffman, said North Wilkesboro is all about the fans, and adding more laps per dollar will be a better experience for those who attend. Graphic courtesy of North Wilkesboro Speedway. Toyota unveiled its newest GT3 car to replace the Lexus RCF GT3. The car will be called the Toyota GR GT3, with the goal being to create a car that's easy to drive and compete for wins worldwide. According to Jamie Klein from Sports Car 365, the GR GT3 car is expected to race in next year's Nürburgring 24 hours, with the possibility of entering the Nürburgring Endurance Series and Super GT's GT300 class as well. In a statement, Toyota said they believe in putting the driver first, whether it's a professional or gentleman driver, and is currently working on an optimal customer support system to allow future GR GT3 customers, to enjoy motorsports to the fullest. Photo courtesy of Toyota Gazoo Racing. During the early hours of last Sunday morning, 13-year-old Keelan Harvick made history at Five Flags Speedway. The son of NASCAR Cup Series champion Kevin Harvick became the youngest winner in the history of the Snowflake 125 Pro Late Model race. Keelan started 15th and drove his way through the field to victory lane in Pensacola, Florida. His father, Kevin, told NASCAR Regional that they typically try to find the hardest races for Keelan to enter because he'll learn more, and believes that it's detrimental to young race car drivers if you don't test them against the best competition. Photo courtesy of NASCAR Regional. And on a separate note, longtime short track racer Stephen Nasse won the 58th running of the Snowball Derby on Monday afternoon after, rain affected the Pensacola area, all week long. So they finally got down on Monday with Stephen Nasse taking his long-awaited win in that crown jewel after Truck Series regular Ty Majeski got black flag for jumping a late restart after dominating the event. Rick Ware Racing's NASCAR Cup Series team will switch from Ford to Chevrolet in 2026. They've signed a multi-year partnership with General Motors, which includes a technical alliance with Richard Childress Racing. RWR will also use ECR engines for Cody Ware's number 51 Chevrolet. Team owner Rick Ware said teaming up with RCR and ECR provides a foundation they can build on for the future. Graphic courtesy of Rick Ware Racing. Nick Sanchez announced that he won't return to big machine racing next year in the NASCAR Raleigh Auto Parts Series in 2025. Sanchez moved up to the series formerly known as the Xfinity Series, driving in the number 48 Chevrolet for the Scott Borchetta-owned organization after his rookie season. Sanchez finished 11th in points after making the playoffs thanks to his victory in the summer race at Echo Park Speedway. And in this statement, Sanchez said, "Over the weekend, I was informed that I will not be driving the number 48 for big machine racing in 2026. I'm grateful to Scott Borchetta, Patrick Donahue, everyone at Chevrolet, and the whole team. I'm proud of all we have accomplished this year, including our win. Unfortunate timing and circumstances, but it's strictly business. When one door closes, another one opens. I'm excited about what is ahead." So Nick Sanchez, coming in the middle of December, searching for a ride. Not really the best timing, but he's going to work hard to try to be on the NASCAR grid in 2026. Frankie Muniz will continue his racing career next year. He'll return to the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series full-time, driving a number 33 Ford F-150 for Team Reum, formerly known as Reum Brothers Racing. Muniz will also add another full-time racing program to his schedule with plans to compete in SRO GT4 America. In that series, Muniz is set to drive a Ford Mustang GT4 for Tech Sport Racing alongside his co-driver Tyler Stone. Muniz said he thought his racing career was over after the 2025 season, but feels like he had some unfinished business on the track as he prepares to run 38 races between the Truck Series and GT4 America. He also has the Malcolm in the Middle reboot coming out next year as well. Photo courtesy of Team Reum. LeVar Scott will graduate to the NASCAR Raleigh Auto Parts Series next year. Scott will drive the number 45 Chevrolet full-time for Alpha Prime Racing alongside teammate Brennan Poole. In the last 2 years, he ran full-time in the ARCA Menard Series for Rev Racing and finished second in points both seasons. In 2025, Scott made his O'Reilly Auto Parts Series debut with Alpha Prime at Dover and finished 28th. Then he ran an additional race with them at Gateway and finished inside the top 20. On social media, Scott said he had a dream and a plan since he was 3 years old, calling it an insane feeling that is actually happening. Graphic courtesy of Alpha Prime Racing. The entry list was unveiled for the 2026 FIA World Endurance Championship season. 14 different manufacturers will be represented across the Hypercar and LMGT3 classes. 17 Hypercars and 18 LMGT3s make up the 35-car grid for the full season. In Hypercar, most of the same teams and manufacturers will return, minus Porsche's exit from the top category, as Porsche Penske Motorsport will only focus on IMSA moving forward, and Proton competition won't return because they couldn't afford to run a second Porsche 963 full-time to meet the requirement of each manufacturer entering 2 cars. But you'll still see Proton filled in 2 Ford Mustangs GT3s and LMGT3. And with Porsche out of the top class, Genesis takes their spot in the grid with the numbers 19 and 17 Genesis GMR 001 prototypes. And now looking at LMGT3, United Autosports won't be in the series next year, as they'll focus on the McLaren Hypercar program for 2027. And in their place, Garage 59 takes over the McLaren LMGT3 entries. Also, the Iron Dames are missing from the entry list, as they recently announced that they will be stepping away from the WEC next year. Graphic courtesy of the FIA World Endurance Championship. And now looking at another entry list, the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship released the entry list for next month's Rolex 24 at Daytona. It's really crazy because it seems like we're just getting into the off season, but we're back in action next month for the Rolex 24, and we'll see a 61 car grid with 11 entries in GTP, 14 in LMP2, 15 in GTD Pro, and 21 in GTD. And looking at some of the driver lineups in each class, although Team Penske's IndyCar drivers Joseph Newgarden and Scott McLaughlin tested the Porsche 963 at the offseason test session at Daytona a few weeks ago, neither were listed in the team's Rolex 24 driver lineup. So it's looking like that Porsche Penske Motorsports decided to stick with a 3-driver lineup instead of adding a 4th. Another driver who tested with Action Express Racing but isn't included on the entry list is NASCAR driver Connor Zilisch, which has a TBD next to the number 31 Whelen Engineer Cadillac. In Meyer Shanks Racing number 93, Acura, the 4th driver slot, is also listed as TBD. Super Formula driver Kaku Ota is expected to fill that seat. In LMP2, ex-Formula 1 driver Logan Sargent is listed in the number 18 Era Motorsport prototype. PR1 Matheson Motorsports recently announced that Harry Tinkner and Misha Goldberg will run full-time in the number 52 LMP2 car, with Parker Thompson, leaving the Vasser Sullivan Lexus GT program. He's going to be coming to LMP2 for that team on the Michelin Endurance Cup race, and Ben Keaton back for his annual stop in the Rolex 24. Enter Europole competition, also entering a second LMP2 car, the number 343 car, which will see Aaron McLaren IndyCar driver Nolan Siegel a part of that driver lineup. And now looking at some of the notable lineups in GTD Pro that haven't been announced before this entry list drop, Paul Miller Racing, and they're going to drop down to a single BMW M4 GT3, and the number 1 BMW will be shared by Neil Verhagen, Connor D. Felipe, Max Hesse, and Dan Harper. Pfaff Motorsports will also have 3 Lamborghini factory drivers in his number 9 entry with Andrea Caldarelli, Sandy Mitchell, Mirko Bortolotti, and a 4th driver that's TBD. And then number 14, Bass Sullivan Lexus will see Jack Hawksworth and Ben Barnicoat reunited for the full season after, spending some time apart in different categories in IMSA, with IndyCar driver Kyle Kirkwood back for the Enduros. RLL's Team McLaren's number 59 will see Max Esterson, Yuri Vips, and Dean McDonald, and a 4th driver TBD in that seat. And the number 62, Risi Competizione Ferrari is back with factory drivers Daniel Serra, Davide Rigon, and Alessandro Perguidi. And there will also be some big changes at Multimatic Motorsports as Ben Barker and Dennis Olsen prepare to tackle a full season. A number 64 Ford Mustang with Mike Rockenfeller stepping back to an endurance role only. And then the number 65 Ford Mustang GT3, Christopher Mees is coming in for the full season alongside the returning Frederick Vervish. He's also going to be back. And Seb Prio, who was full-time last year in IMSA, he'll be stepping back to the endurance role. And the number 911 Grello Porsche, which has been really famous over in Europe, they're going to have Klaus Barkler, Ricardo Feller, and Thomas Pranin. That's going to be for the Michelin Endurance Cup entry for this year. And now looking at GTD, we're going to have Aaron Tielitz and Benjamin Peterson in that number 12 Lexus. With since Hawksworth is going to be going back up to the GTD Pro class after spending a year in GTD. Frankie Montecalvo is going to be in for the Enduros, and Esteban Masson is going to be in there, for the Rolex 24. And just scrolling down the entry list, we're going to see Yiffy Ye. He's going to be in the number 023 Ferrari for Triassic Competizione Ferrari. He's going to be in there with Robert McGinnis, Kenan Cook, and a 4th driver that's going to be TBD. Yeah, and a lot of other familiar teams and drivers are going to be back in this category as well. Another number 44, Magnus Racing Aston Martin is back for Daytona. You have John Ponner, Spencer Pompelli, Nicky Tim, and Madison Snow. Real interesting to see Madison Snow in this Magnus Racing Aston Martin because he spent the last handful of years, with Paul Miller Racing. So it's quite a difference to see him here. And then Wayne Taylor Racing's number 45, Lamborghini. You're going to see Danny Formal, Trent Hinman, Graham Dole, and also Andretti's IndyCar driver Marcus Ericsson. He's going to be in the GTD class, for the Rolex 24. And just looking down the list, just have a really packed driver lineup all in GTD. And one last notable here for GTD is the number 120, Wright Motorsports Porsche. You're going to see a 4-driver lineup at Daytona for Adam Adelson, Elliott Skier, Tom Sargent, and Callum Milot in that number 120. And the interesting thing about Callum Milot, he recently announced that he's going to be running full-time in IMSA's GTD class this year. So he's going to run full-time in both IndyCar and IMSA GTD. So it looks like the Prima program may be coming back next year. So he will be running both series. But if not, this is a good fallback option for Callum Milot to go out there and, run IMSA in case the IndyCar program falls apart. And the graphics in this section, courtesy of IMSA. And also we got the ARCA Menard Series East Series. They were able to release their schedule for the 2026 season, and the season opener is going to be a fan favorite short track, Hickory Motor Speedway in Hickory, North Carolina. That race is going to happen on Saturday, March 28th, and then they're going to return to Rockingham Speedway, the Nashville Fairgrounds, Toledo Speedway, Lucas Oil Indianapolis Raceway Park, Flat Rock Speedway, Iowa Speedway, and then the season finale is going to take place on Thursday night, September 17th. At Bristol Motor Speedway. And it's certainly quite a mix with this ARCA East schedule because you're going to have four combo races with ARCA National, and then you're going to have the 4 standalone races, which I'm sure is going to be really exciting, for the ARCA Menard Series East, and the graphic courtesy of ARCA. Isabella Robusto signed a deal with Nitro Motorsports to run full-time in 2026. And she's going to be behind the wheel of the number 55 Toyota, which is going to be sponsored by Mobil One and Yahoo. Is basically going to look similar to what she did this year with Venturini Motorsports when she was in that same car. The only difference is that Nitro Motorsports is now, has bought out Venturini Motorsports. So she's going to be under the direction of team owner Nick Tucker when she gets her second full season of ARCA started up. And team owner Nick Tucker said in a statement that they're thrilled to have Robusto at Nitro Motorsports for a full-time ARCA effort. He said that she's proven that she has speed, a great attitude, and a work ethic needed to succeed at this level, and noted that her past performance in ARCA shows that she's ready to compete up front with the backing of Mobil 1 and Yahoo. They believe that they have the pieces in place for her to have a really strong 2026 season. Photo courtesy of Nitro Motorsports. We also saw the F1 Academy release their schedule for the 2026 season as well, as we're gonna once again see 14 races across 7 rounds, and we're gonna see some returning venues and some new ones as well. Looking at the graphic here on the screen, courtesy of F1 Academy. Season's gonna get underway, in Shanghai in March, and then April gonna be back in Saudi Arabia, the Jeddah circuit, and then in May back at Circuit Gilles Villeneuve in Montreal. Then they're gonna be at Silverstone, Zandvoort, and then the last 2 races of the year are going to be in America at Circuit of the Americas, and then once again the season finale at the Las Vegas Grand Prix. And Formula One Academy Managing Director Susie Wolf says that the 2026 F1 Academy calendar reflects the momentum that they're building and the visibility that they're earning across the sport. She said that Silverstone and Austin are 2 fantastic additions to the 2026 schedule, and returning to 5 established races that give them the strongest calendar yet, closing in Las Vegas once again, where she hopes that they finish the season with the same style and flair that they delivered this year when Dorian Pine will end up winning her championship. And next, we unfortunately have to end this segment with some sad news that occurred over the weekend. We actually have 2 sad news stories to report. And we're going to start off with this one right here. Former NASCAR O'Reilly Auto Parts Series driver Michael Annett, he unfortunately passed away at age 39, and this was announced on Friday evening that we lost Michael Annett. And throughout his career, he was known as he was known for racing in the NASCAR O'Reilly Auto Parts Series, and he started full time, I believe it was in 2009 with Germain Racing. It was with them for a couple of years, and then he went to Rusty Wallace Racing for a year before spending the 2012 and 2013 seasons with Richard Petty Motorsports. And then when 2014 came around, he ran full time in the NASCAR Cup Series with Tommy Baldwin Racing, and then he spent the 2015, 2016 seasons with Harry Scott Motorsports before coming back to the NASCAR Raleigh Auto Parts Series in 2017 through 2021. And one of the main highlights of Michael Annett's career was winning the 2009 NASCAR O'Reilly Auto Parts Series season opener at Daytona. That was his only career win in the NASCAR National Series, and that was a day that that people will never forget, because he had the dominant car that day, and he held on to win that race. You can see right here in this photo on the screen, courtesy of Sean Gardner from Getty Images, of Michael Annett. After working so hard to make it to this level and succeed in NASCAR, he finally was able to reach the highest of highs in his racing career by winning at the World Center of Racing. And Annett was also a 2-time winner in the Argo Menard Series as well at Daytona and Talladega. And acknowledging the passing of Michael Annett, members of the NASCAR community reacted to losing him, as Junior Motorsports right here put out a statement saying our thoughts and prayers are with the entire Annett family with the passing of our friend Michael Annett. Michael was a key member of JRM from 2017 until he retired in 2021, and was an important part in turning us into a 4-car organization we remain today. And also, on a more lighthearted note here, wanted to bring up what Mike Harmon said. He said our heartfelt thoughts and prayers are with Michael's family, friends, and everyone at Junior Motorsports. Rest in peace, Michael. I thought this was an extremely classy response from Mike Harmon, because you may remember several years ago in the NASCAR Raleigh Auto Parts Series practice session at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, those two got into an incident in practice, and Michael Annett called Mike Harmon an idiot. And then Mike Harmon, famously said that he should call me an idiot to my face, like come over to Applebee's. And it just become a running joke over in the NASCAR garage for the last few years. So despite the conflict that they had several years ago, really nice to see Mike Harmon, say these words about Michael. And then also Sammy Smith, who's racing with Junior Motorsports right now. He said they're very sad to lose someone who meant so much to me and my family. Michael was a great person to so many, and we'll miss him a lot. And throughout Michael Annett's career, His main sponsor was Pilot Flying J. And guess what Sammy Smith's sponsor is right now at Junior Motorsports? Pilot Flying J. So there's a lot of connections there between Michael Annett and Sammy Smith. So I'm sure when Sammy straps into his Junior Motorsports ride in 2026, wearing those Pilot Flying J colors, the same colors that Michael Annett, wore for most of his career, I'm sure he's going to be thinking about his friend all throughout the 2026 season. And also that wasn't the only bit of sad news that we got, because ARCA West driver Nick Janitas also passed away, and it was really crazy, because as soon as a few hours after we learned the passing of Michael Annett, several hours later, the car owner for Nick Janitas announced that Janitas had passed away. So we lost 2 drivers in the NASCAR scene in the span of a few hours, which is made Friday night, Saturday morning really heavy for the entire community. And in a statement, ARCA said, "We extend our deepest condolences to the family and friends and colleagues of ARCA Menard Series driver Michael Annett and ARCA Menard Series West driver Nick Janitas, both of whom have recently passed away." Annett, a native of Des Moines, Iowa, competed in 10 ARCA Menard Series events between 2007 and 2009 for Kevin Kowinski and Bill Davis and Shiggy Hattori, earning victories at both Talladega and Daytona. He was 39. Janitas from Woodland Hills, California, made 39 starts in the ARCA Menard Series West from 2004 to 2025, driving for teams owned by John Wood, Chris Loudon, Jan Quackenbush, and Joe Nava. After returning to racing following illness, he competed for Nava in 2025 at Sonoma, Moderna, and most recently on October 10th at the Las Vegas Motor Speedway Bull Ring. Their contributions to the sport and racing community will be remembered. And on behalf of everyone here at Grid Network, we extend our deepest condolences to the family and friends of Michael Annett and Nick Janitas during this difficult time, and we hope their memory will be a blessing. And now I'm going to turn over to Matt for this week's Hots and Nots.
Yeah, sad news about both Michael and Nick. Our thoughts with their family and friends this week. Awful just to happen before the holiday, or in your part of the world, Kobe, mid-holiday season, but coming into the Christmas period. Quickly before we do Hots and Nots, which Jamie's going to come back to me for, I just want to pick up on something that we talked about last week and mentioned in passing when we were talking about the Toyota F1 story earlier on. Kalle Rovanperä was in testing action today at Suzuka for Super Formula, but he only completed, this is coming from speedcafe.com, a story by Simon Chapman. He only completed, where is it, the number, 32 laps in the morning of the first day of 3 days at Suzuka today. Obviously, Japan about to wake up for day 2. He only completed 32 laps in the morning and then was sat down by doctors with vertigo and will not complete the test. So a big blow for Kalle Rovanperä at the very beginning of his Super Formula career. He's been banned by Japanese doctors from getting back in the car until he is past fit, basically. So his next single-seater action will be that run in New Zealand in January in the Formula Regional Oceania Championship there. Jack Doohan was in action as well in that test, but he crashed at Degner 2 and did not speak to the media afterwards. Igor Fraga topped the day. So there's your update from, we've never done that before on the show, an update from Super Formula testing. Let's bring Omi back then to finish the show. Before I do though, I want to say that next week, it's the final show of the year for Grid Tonight next Wednesday. We are going to do, and Kobe doesn't know this yet, and nor does Josh because he's not here, we're going to do our Hots and Nots of the year on the show next week, because there isn't going to be much else in terms of stuff to talk about because everything's finished. Everyone's on the pack down for Christmas. So we're going to do Hots and Nots of the year next week to finish out the show. Finish out the show and finish out the year. Abu Dhabi then, Omi, Hots and Nots. What have you got for us? What did you like and dislike from the weekend?
Oh, well, I mean, I disliked a lot, I think. Yeah, Yas Marina suck, and I think I'm not just going to say it specifically to F1. I think overall, I was commentating the F2 action as well. Just not a lot going on. when F2 was struggling to overtake. I mean, I was doing the sprints in terms of lead filling in for JB, and it was getting so repetitive. Of course, in the feature race, you get some pit stops coming in. In the
Yeah.
sprint race, it was lap after lap of everyone using the DRS, getting close, and no one actually being able to do anything until we got to like the final stages. The DRS, it was basically repetitive where you'd get everyone closing in with the DRS, you get down to turn 9, and then you go to the third sector, everyone loses the time, and then it's basically go again. And we just kept having that for the entire race, and no safety car to spice anything up with some late pit stops. And the circuits delivered, especially for F2 as we're on the topic of it. Some great moments, well, some crazy moments, some last lap battles between Leclerc, Albon, Iwasa, Drogovic. There's been so much that has gone on, but yeah, it's just not that consistent option. It's not if you want a big moment, you can get that from here and there. I'd say for a good consistent race, as you guys discussed heavily last week,
Yeah.
it just doesn't deliver. It's not giving the consistent good race that you want, and especially to end the season as well. It just lacks it, and it's so annoying.
Yeah, shame there wasn't a title on the line, of course, with Fauna only wrapping it up the week before. Yeah, we did talk about it on the show last week, and I think the changes they've made to the track there, and it showed again in the Grand Prix, especially. I haven't seen any of the F2 races, but in the Grand Prix, especially last week, the changes they made to the track, what was that, 5 years ago now, which is crazy to think of, have not worked. They've actually taken away overtaking opportunities rather than made more, unless, of course, you're a fan of Max Verstappen in 2021. Hot Lando Norris, world champion. Congratulations to him. That was a Grand Prix of which not a lot happened, which is exactly how he wanted it to happen.
Yeah, that's one of my hots as well. And McLaren not messing anything up. I guess that can also count as a hot. Fair play to them. Delivered the basic that they needed to at the important time. Only one pit stop needed, and it happened. So yeah, I'd say that's probably one of the only hots as well. For anyone wondering, Antonelli was the final driver to press the DRS. Stroll was the final driver to make the overtake there with the DRS as well.
I was going to come to that. That is a hot that DRS is dead. Good evening, Josh from Wales. He's watching us from his hot tub. That's as much information as we need, honestly, at 20 to 12 our time. I'm sure we'll reconvene on that next week when he's back from. I was about to say sunning himself, but it's December. Adam says, I'm planning to go to the ARCA East Opener at Hickory next year. Yes, more people out at the racetrack. That's always good. Adam, I'm sure you'll report back on that when it comes around. I don't think I've got anything else to add from a fairly dull weekend outside of that. I was watching that Grand Prix with, everyone was talking about games. Something's going to happen. Max is going to need help. When he was coming around to get to the start of the last lap there, it was like, right, he's on the last lap. If they throw a safety car now, it's done. It was a white flag in NASCAR kind of moment when Max Verstappen took the start of the last lap at the weekend, and you knew that if there was going to be any drama, it would have had to have happened by now, and we weren't going to get yet another silly finish to a championship. So that was the best thing that came out of that race for me, because I did not want any more of anything at the weekend, and I think Red Bull played it as fairly as they could, obviously with Max going off up the road and winning the race, which I said on the show last week would happen.
Yeah, Verstappen did win it. So that was, I guess, a perfect way. Formula E was also on, I guess. They had their weekend.
Oh, yes.
Great to see Pepe Marti walk away, first of all, from that.
Reminding me, that was a big old crash for Pepe Marti on Formula E debut. And to mention that, actually, we didn't talk about, because we didn't talk about pick a winner, but Alex Fleener got the only correct point of Jake Dennis getting the win at Sao Paulo last weekend. So, Alex, a Christmas present to you. You are the only person on the Grid Network 2026 pick a winner leaderboard, and you are top of it because you're the only person on it. So, Merry Christmas, my friend, and many more points to come for him and everyone else next year. Josh is steaming himself nicely. Well, yeah, okay, fine. Think about your hots and knots for next year, and I'm going to put this to everyone in the grid chat tomorrow, and hopefully we can have some videos of people doing their clips of their hots and knots for next year, which we can fill in the show at the end, because we were going to perhaps have an FIA election party on the show next week when MBS was out, but that's not the case anymore, so we don't have to worry about that. It'll be hots and knots of the year. I think I'm done. If you are.
Well, I guess as it's officially announced, the F1 Academy calendar. Even though it was technically announced months ago by the FIA leaking it officially and then deleting it, we had that mess go on. But yeah, we already knew the circuits, the dates, and everything. But I guess as it's officially announced, I can say, well, Silverstone. I guess that's a big hot that they'll be going there. Silverstone will be quite a crazy weekend. You've got an F1 sprint, of course. You've got F2. You've got F3. And you've also then got F1 Academy. It's going to be quite crazy. And in terms of not just on the F1 weekend, you've got Formula E on, you've got IndyCar, of course, you've got NASCAR as well. It's just going to be a mess of a weekend. I know there's plenty of, I think all of the 3 junior series that I cover on JB Motorsports 2 is also on. So it's just going to be one of those wild weekends. So make sure you book off work and everything and be completely ready for that Silverstone weekend. But yeah, I think I'm done in terms of.
That's of course in the middle of a World Cup as well, so it is going to be a full summer of sport, full summer of sport next year. Thank you, Omi, again for stepping in this week for Josh, who is watching us from his hot tub. So thank you, my friend, and Kobe is going to take us out.
Yeah, let's land the plane and go home for the night. Please be sure to contribute to Grid Network by subscribing to our YouTube channel. Thank you for helping us reach our 1,700 subscribers. Now we're inching closer to our next milestone of 2,000 subscribers. Hit the bell icon to get notifications so you'll know when we go on the air. Follow all our social media platforms and visit gridnetworktv.com. And take 5 minutes to invest in Grid Network through our Patreon. Join Colin, Deshelle, Mark, Robin, David, Matthew, and Crystal, who all invest each month in the Grid Network. We encourage you to join these fine folks who keep us on the air. And once we hit $500 per month, we can afford to send our team to the track more often and continue growing our media outlet. Link in the video description. And if you want to make a one-time donation to buy me a coffee, click on the link there and get your name on the board and invest as much as you want. Consider buying a specific on-air personality a cup of coffee, and they'll thank you here on the air. And so for Omi from JB Motorsports and Matt White from Grid Endurance Performance Index, I'm Kobe Lambert. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next time on our final show of 2025 before we get to enjoy a nice 2-week holiday for Christmas and New Year's, and then we'll be back during the first Wednesday of January. So have a great night, everyone.